Hi everyone, so this is just a voiceover from the last unit. Sorry about the slight delay. I'm having to get tested for COVID. It's been a bit of a little panic here. I don't think I do have it, but as you know, it starts being complicated with the self-isolation, all that, and I'm getting tested tomorrow. So it didn't happen when this recording when I wanted it to happen, and I'm a bit slow on the marking, the grading. But I think it's just a case of the flu. But these days, you never know, and you can't take a risk really. So now we've embarked on the whole isolation and testing protocol. So better late than never. Here we go. It's the last recap of the sessions. We're going to address any remaining questions on assignments. If you have any, you can send an email them. But I think at the moment everything's quiet, so you seem to just be plowing ahead and submitting. And we'll look back to the course objectives. I'm going to offer you a little reflection on the course myself, and then talk a little bit about the flow of the MEDs. This is lots of little housekeeping sort of issues, basically. So in terms of remaining assignments, we have till Sunday to put the grades in. I'm running a bit behind myself, but hopefully, if you could get everything in by, let's say, Friday at the latest, if you're still behind, because then it still gives me 2 days to wrap up and all that, and then to put the marks in on Sunday night. If you need any support for any of the assignments, feel free to email me. If you're getting feedback from assignment 4 or assignment 3 or assignment 6, no, because you did that as a team, it wasn't really targeted on your proposal. But if from 3 or 4 you get feedback and you want to make slight amendments to your proposal, you can still make those amendments, the slight amendments, until Sunday. What you can do is just actually post a reply to original post in the forum, and then put your edited version. I will go straight to the edited version. So you'll feel free to do that if you do feel you want to make slight edit in light of my grading. Any remaining issues on the course content, if there's something we've missed or something you're not sure about, feel free to email me. But also there's a Unit 12 post-course forum. So I create this every time in each of my courses so that in the coming weeks, if there's still matters that relate to the course that you want to continue talking about, I'll keep monitoring that. And you can post questions there as well, okay, for at least a few week post-course. Here's a few housekeeping things I'm going to look at: publication of abstract, submission to conferences, referencing style, Endnote, referencing software, importance of the pros in the quality of research, and collaborating across methodological divides. So abstract, we haven't talked much about abstract. That's why I just want to loop back. The abstract, really, we don't target when we talk about a proposal, because the abstract you actually would write at the end. You would actually write when all of your findings and your outcomes and discussion is written. And then you normally go back to abstract and you create, normally within, say, short, some journals is 50 words, other journals is 100 words. But you create tiny minimalist summary of everything that you have. So really, ideally, all of your sections are represented in the abstract. It's not just the intro and context. It's actually a fully mini version of the whole proposal. So you would give a quick hint to your theory, quick hint to the methodology, quick hints about the findings, quick hints about the outcomes and discussions. What's its purpose? It's what the search engine picks on, and it's what's obviously free access. So before someone goes into a library or purchases a copy, etc., they'll look at your abstract. So abstract is quite important, because if it's badly written, people will not actually access your piece. So it's important that you do write it properly in a very sort of, it's your little branding, basically. That's why you're selling all the elements of your paper, to make sure that people actually are going to either enter your library and download the copy, or even sometimes buy your journal article. Why are they so important? Well, because again, you write for readership, right? So if it doesn't reach your audience, you haven't reached your target and your objective. So really, it's part of making sure that the people who need to read your piece are actually reading your piece. It is a nod to the abstract. It's something you would learn to do after you actually do a study the first, completely fully the first time. But there is a nod to it, and people sometimes do badly at it because they will write it as a draft when they write the proposal, and then they kind of rush it through, and everything is very rushed at the end, right? The publisher is pushing you and you've got all these edits, and often people overlook the abstract, and it's a pity. So I think when you get to it, and if you ever try to do a publication, make sure you carve out some time where you give proper attention to the abstract, because it should not be rushed. Conference submission. So I've been encouraging to think ahead and think about, as a graduate student, getting involved in this process of production of content. Um, a, um, a conference proposal is a nice way, even if you're still at the proposal stage or you're still in the work in progress in terms of data collection, etc. It's a good way of getting your feet wet and getting a bit of that peer pressure to finish. It also makes you feel good, and it's probably going to be quite a motivational force in getting you to finish a study if you've begun. Think that you may say, oh, I'm only in the first course of my master's, but most conferences for 2022 are already online and advertising, and most of them will select papers at least 6 months ahead. The conference business is well in advance. So really, even as a young, scholar and just a beginning in your graduate program, you should really look ahead, and you should already be now in a position to actually put these proposals in for the end of your masters. That's actually where it's being booked now. How does a draft of a conference submission? So, draft of a conference submission looks a little bit like your assignment three, and it is done usually through a form which most conferences have. So they will have specific questions for you, but you will see that the questions are pretty much what we did for assignment three. There is an added section. The added section is that normally in conferences now they will ask you to consider not just the benefits and the pertinence and the relevance of the findings of your research or the proposed findings, but they will also ask you to provide some outcomes for the session itself. So in the live sessions, what will be the outcomes for the participants? What will they take away in terms of their own career and their own agenda? So that's normally an added question that you find at the end, something that we've not had to do during assignment three. And what must it cover? It covers pretty much the same thing as you've done for assignment three. As I said, you wouldn't have much more of a stretch there. It's pretty much the same work, except you would also think of, at least normally they ask you 3 or 4 participant outcomes that you add at the end. Sometimes you write them up. Sometimes you just list them as a sort of bullet points. I really recommend that you do this because you will feel hugely confident once you've done your first conference presentation. You may feel a little wobbly, obviously, and scared, but once you've done it, it's going to make you feel really strong, both in terms of your ability to create community with other scholars and in terms of pushing you to finish whatever you're working on and to actually get a study out. So it will be the motivation factor to then get a journal publication out. Usually that's the way people do it, right? So a presentation at a conference, then they finish the study, and then they go in and submit the paper. In terms of finding conferences, well, again, it's a case of, glass of wine, evening, browsing. There are some depositories. Be careful, there's some predatory conferences. So some conferences are just in the business of running conferences. You want to find some either Canadian or international conference on education that's not part of one of these big business machines. That's just an original circle of scholars that has, just look at the history. Normally you get a bit of the history of how many times it's run, what it's about. You can normally see the programming that happened last year, etc. I really recommend it. In schools and school boards, normally you get funding for this. There's quite a lot of funding at school division level and provincial level to allow you to go on conferences. So it's also can turn sometimes into a good trip. Hopefully by then COVID will be finished and we can travel again. And there are a lot of grants for teachers to attend conferences that are flying around. So do keep an eye, and it doesn't have to come out of pocket. Referencing style. So we've worked on APA. That's a referencing style. Don't forget, it's not just APA that exists. There's also Boston, Chicago, Harvard, all sorts of different styles. For that reason, I would really encourage you to use a software, because if you are using something like Endnote or RefWorks, you will be able to switch at the top from one to the other. So imagine that you're doing the study that you've worked on for this course, and you get to the end and you think you're going to present it into a journal on education. But in the end, you get rejected and you submit it again to a journal on technology, since some of you are working technology. They may accept you, but they may say, oh, we don't use APA, we use Harvard. And then you would have to re-edit your entire paper just to submit it. So using software is going to be very important. And all of us in academia use software. So we are really hypocritical in the sense of say, be careful and do your manual referencing properly, but none of us do it manually. We all use software. Um, what is non-negotiable? And what is non-negotiable is that you be consistent. When when I teach a course in graduate studies on introductory research, I say really the only thing we can ever ask you is that you be consistent. So you use a referencing style consistently throughout your paper, because there are several styles, and we could be using another. But to be honest, within UPI, all of my colleagues will say you don't have a choice; you have to use APA. So play the game and use APA, but be conscious that APA is not the only style out there, and it's all bit of an arbitrary choice when a faculty chooses one. There's actually lots of different referencing styles. So in terms of software, you have two choices. You have Endnote. I think we've discussed this already, but I just wanted to repeat. You have Endnote, which is worldwide, which has a huge community of millions of literally of users, lots of problem solving and bug solutions on the net. It's a bit like the Apple community. You just go on the net and you find someone live who's going to tell you how they fix the problem. Um, you don't have access to Endnote for free at UPI. They've decided not to give you a license for that. Instead, they give you assistance with RefWork, which is a free software, which is only used in the Maritimes. Not my favorite choice, but it is free and it's better than nothing. So maybe you want to use RefWork for the moment and then switch to Endnote later on in your career. The great thing is that the library will help you with any bug that you find in RefWork, and they will give you technical assistance in using it. I really recommend that you do this now. We don't have time to do it on the course because really the course in 6 weeks is too intense. But if you've got a little bit of free time as the summer end, contact the library and check out what workshops they run. They must run some online. And I'm sorry, I'm really getting breathless tonight. This is getting me worried that maybe I do need a COVID test after all. But anyway, I'll finish this. Yeah, so they will have an online format, I'm sure, because they must have been running it for the last two years. And I would recommend that you take one of the little workshops, and they will show you how to download and how to use it and how to sort out the initial issues you have with it. But then it's going to create your in-text citation and your references for the rest of your program. And I can guarantee you, I've been at this in teaching for about 7 years in higher ed now, that systematically at graduate level, that every time I teach a course, the people who are in a 5% attainment, top performers in the class use referencing software. It may be different referencing software, but they all use referencing software. So is it a coincidence? It's a bit much of a coincidence. I think there's definitely some sort of correlation that it goes with academic excellence. And I don't think it's because the software gives you the grades, but it's part of a general reflection that when you use software, you will see it makes you very conscious of how referencing works, of where there might have been potential mistakes. So it highlights your sensitivity to the quality of text production. And that's what leads you to become a really high performance student and write well. So I would definitely encourage you, can't stress enough that you engage with some sort of referencing software. If you feel courageous, I don't know how much Endnote costs. I've always had it for free through a university, but I think it's probably about $200. It's live licensing, so once you've downloaded, you get all the updates and stuff. But the choice is yours, absolutely. But I'd recommend doing one. Importance of prose and quality research. Yeah, I think this is important too. Sorry, there's lots of loose ends here, but we need to tackle them because we haven't tackled them in the content. Obviously, in this course, we've looked at qualitative research. Quantitative write-up is quite easy because when you get to the findings, it's mostly discussing, your sample, your results, your, standard deviation, etc. What can you interpret from the figures, and then is your hypothesis proved or disproved? It's very straightforward. In qualitative, you're not going to be it's not going to be as easy to write up, right? There's nothing you can synthesize. There's no table, there's no graphs, there's no easy stats. It's very descriptive. It's a lot of text, and even when you analyze it, you still have a lot of text because there's no easy way for you to put that analysis forward. So something that we've not had time to practice in this course because you don't do data collection and data analysis is how to write up qualitative analysis. So I really recommend that You select a couple of papers and you go straight to their data analysis and you look at how they do that, because there's an art to doing that. And what you're going to realize as well is that not only is there an art to doing that, but in qualitative work, your prose keeps improving throughout your life. It's almost like writing good fiction. Writing good data analysis in qualitative is highly connected to a great mastery of prose. And there's lots of skills there that need to be developed, and we can't assume that you have them as a young scholar. But as you continue to do this, and if you have a chance to do qualitative studies and to do the write-up, you will improve, and you will have to keep a continuous attention to the work that you need to do on the prose, because the prose becomes the vehicle for your findings. It's not a page, it's not a graph, it's not a table, it's the way you write them up and the way you convey them to your reader. It becomes a story. It becomes a story of what you did and how you did it and what you found. And there's definitely a part of storytelling in this, because yes, you can crudely put that information into words, but that's not going to engage your reader. Good qualitative research pulls the reader in and makes them feel really as if this was happening in front of their eyes. And there's a way of synthesizing as well. When you have so much information, wrapping it up in a way that doesn't simplify or trivialize or reduce the complexity of what you're looking at, but still able to draw large trends and important conclusions and to write them up nicely. So importance of that, we couldn't practice on this course, but it's important that you realize that it's part of this process as well. Pitfalls of qualitative data analysis. So we've just talked about the write-up, but there's also a lot of pitfalls. I think we talked about this before, but I need to again repeat them. You get a lot of data usually when you work in qualitative. So the problem is rarely the data, the volume of data. The problem is that you have too much data. So qualitative analysis can become very tough because often people are underprepared and they have more data than they thought, and they get a bit lost in the coding, etc. So sometimes you see some beautiful studies that really fall apart because the coding part hasn't been done properly, and then it means that you never actually get to the findings. You're not able to state your findings in a way that makes sense. It might be because of time. It might be because the student or the writer hasn't, the author hasn't developed enough skills to do this well. It may be their first attempt. They may have been too ambitious with data collection. They may have been so, and that happens a lot, so focused on collection that they leave the analysis to too late. So all of the energy goes into the data collection and none goes into the analysis. So often a lot of this gets published as work in progress, which is really sad because that's really a bad piece of writing if you don't have findings. So you're going to have to keep your eyes open and be critical and apply a lot of scrutiny when you read these. And often you will be called on again to be a critique and to say, good study, good parameters, good question, good data collection, but terrible data analysis or incomplete data analysis. And that's the time when you have to put your critique hat on and make those assessments. Collaborating across methodological divides. So again, we've talked a lot about the dangers of mixed methodology. You're going to see a lot of people who are saying that working on mixed methods teams, it is a lot harder than you think. So I've given you lots of caveats, and I think, beware of the mixed method traps. I've explained to you what good mixed methods looks like. But bad mixed methods is when you have people who, for taking a shortcut and saying, oh, let's just do mixed method, we'll just do some sort of potluck here and throw it all in. It's not easy because, as you see now that we've looked at theory informs methods. So if people are coming to something with different methods, it means in fact they're coming to something with different theories. And then combining and merging theory is not actually that easy. It can be done at a very high level, but it's not just a matter of saying, oh, we'll throw it all in, it will work. No, because your theory is your lens. You're not necessarily looking at the phenomenon in the same way at all. So throwing it all in and say, oh, we'll do a mix match and we'll just do a bit of everything. Usually, again, it's a pitfall. It leads to really problematic studies. You need some clarity. You need to see what the theory is, how it's led to a choice of methodology, how that methodology has informed the choice of tools. And when you see people quickly rushing into sort of mixed methods and combining things, I think as graduate students, particularly as graduate students in the master's program, our eyes become bigger than our stomach, and we think, oh, I'll do a bit of everything. No, you can't do a bit of everything. At one point, you have to make choices, and you have to make choices that are clear. So I choose this theory. This theory leads me to a choice of methodology. From there, I make a choice of tools. There's the clarity in my process. And when you see people not doing that, beware, be careful, and apply scrutiny and be critical. Recap on the objectives quickly. I do this every time. So we had six in this one. Examine the various stages of the research process in their sequence. So we did that at the beginning of the course and as well in your proposal. Acquire the skills necessary to produce a literature review. We did this in assignment 4 and we practiced it in class. Examine the various methodological options available to the researcher. You did this in your group presentation on methodology, which I'm about to mark. And also I did 2 of them as a class presentation. Explore the process of data collection in its various formats. Examine the group presentation, practice, and the proposal. So again, that was part of your methodology, on your exercise on methodology. Examine data analysis and reporting, hurdles and opportunities. We looked at this in Unit 11 when we looked at dissemination. Explore the various evaluation criteria available in assessing the quality of the studies and research finding. And you did this in your practice on class, which I think no one attempted, by the way, but you have a sample there, which I posted, and in your assignment 7, which you're about to get feedback on. In terms of my reflecting on the delivery of the course, it's a heavy course. I'm well aware of this. I've taught it, probably close to 10 times now. It's more demanding than all of your other master's courses. And then when you deliver it in a 6-week period, it's tempting for me to lighten the load and to give you less practices, less assignment, etc. But trust me, I've walked that tight line many times, and I really feel guilty if I don't give you the full practice of all these skills. You suffer later because then people assume that you have those skills when you get to other courses. So it's always a bit hard, 6110. On the one hand, I'd like to be kind with you and do less, but I know that if I do less, you suffer later on. So my responsibility is really to give you an exposure to all of these key skills, and I can guarantee you that as a result, there will be lots of happy surprises in the rest of your courses when you feel I'm prepared. I've seen this before. We talked about this before. I appreciate your commitment and efforts, and it will, lighten the load in the rest of the program. I hope it's inspired you to really consider yourself as an emerging scholar and to try your hand at publishing over the next semesters. I said semesters there, don't necessarily mean this semester. But again, time is of the essence, right? Don't push it too late. Don't say, oh, I'll do this after my last course on the MA. Get your toes in, your toes wet, try and think of a question, if it's not this one, another that you're getting ready for. Ideally, push it through your school ethics before you finish the program. Access the people on the program to get feedback on your proposal, etc. Stick it into a conference somewhere as a proposal, so it gives you the motivation to do that. Hopefully, that conference happens at some point in your second year. That will give you the motivation to finish the data collection, etc. You'll publish, you'll feel burnout, but it's going to feel extremely good. You're going to feel confident. You're going to feel you can do this again and again. That's what all successful people in academia have done. I can tell you that I had the advice when I was a master's student: publish at least one paper while you're masters. And it was great advice, gives you a lot of confidence, and I give you the same advice. It's not dramatic if you can't, but if you can push yourself a little bit and do it, you will come out feeling I don't just have a degree, but I have confidence in myself as a scholar as I finish this degree. The course is strenuous because it forces you to move out of quantitative and positivist views. Particularly in this class, there were a lot of people when we started off. If you go back to your original reflection, for a lot of you, research was just quantitative work, right? And now you see that actually in social sciences and education, a large part of what we do is not quantitative. It's really about the why. It's really qualitative. It's about doing rich studies and doing them well. So you are going to be confronted with qualitative methods, whether you like it or not. And as a young researcher, again, not having access to a lab, not access to funding, not being part of a large team, not being a professional researcher full time, what you're likely to do as a teacher is qualitative stuff. And that's totally fine and great, but you need to do it well. So that's why it was so important in this course that we broke that fear that some of you had about qualitative methods, and that we made you relaxed. Following up and placing this into the progression of courses. So you're going to go eventually into 614 theory of research and learning, which I hope the little bits in part B of Unit 11 has prepared you for. You will be dedicating an entire course into theory. What I really advise you is that when you get to theory, you come back to some of your notes on this course, because again, it's a bit artificial that we had this gap there, that we just pretended didn't happen. That's where theory fits. It fits in the research process. So when you get to the research course, come back and examine that fit again, because that's really going to give you a full picture, and then it's going to place things back in sequence. You will again look at qualitative processes when you get to your 619. It's a course on critical pedagogy. It's one of the areas where most of the readings are qualitative. So you're going to have a lot of that when you get to that stage. Even when you do your course on curriculum as well, curriculum and leadership, it's going to be a lot of qualitative work as well. And I think you still take action research in education. Things change. I know at one point it was replaced by inquiry, but I think that course still exists, 6160, which I've taught as well. If it does still exist, or if it's the course on the inquiry that has replaced it, you are going to repeat a lot of what we've done in this course, but it comes in the second year of your program, and then you will go into more detail. Particularly by then, you'll probably get a chance to look at some of the data analysis and data collection, data analysis, data write-up process. And they may even get you to do a mini ethics and actually get some data collection, etc. That depends on the instructor, but hopefully you may get the same process again, but go a bit further with it and be able to do a mini study. So really, it's a foundational block, this one. You will come back to a lot of what you've done in the other courses. And again, feel free to contact me, because I often do have students come back and say, oh, by the way, what about this, what about this, what about this? And I'm always happy to stay in touch with you. So I'm going to jump straight to the bottom. I'm present on LinkedIn, ResearchGate, Academy.edu, Twitter. I use all of these for professional use only. They've all got a message tool, so feel free to connect now. It's easier to use the messenger tool when you're already connected. I would suggest connect now, even if you don't have anything to say to me, and then we can talk later on when eventually you do need to come back and ask questions. Being a graduate student is really about building connections and a whole network of scholars. So I advise you to do this after each of your courses, to really connect on social media with your instructors, and beyond that, maybe even connect with some of the people that you cited in your work. As I said, if you go on ResearchGate, you could literally put all of the authors you've used in your literature review and connect with them all, and then you see what they continue producing, and etc. But that network of scholars is extremely important. It's not two separate things. You don't just produce research and then there's this, connection and community. It's the community that leads you to feel confident about producing research. And it's the community that reads your research once it's finished. So these two processes of growing your visibility and credibility in a community and doing research, they have to grow together. You don't do one and then catch the other one up. You do them simultaneously. So also build your connections now, build your profile on social media. Do all that now, because it'll be too late at the end of the program. Okay, and suddenly you can start by connecting with me on as you finish the course. Got a few resources there that might be interesting for you. So when we talked about, identifying hot topic, developing a flair, look at Ken Robinson, who unfortunately has passed now. He passed last year, I think, but he was one of the kind of guys that just could get on stage in TED Talks and, touch the pulse of what are people, thinking about. That famous, TED Talk on schools kill creativity. It is the most watched TED Talk in the world. I have, eighth grade students who say, "Have you seen the TED Talk by Ken Robinson?" Parents, when we talk about multi-stakeholders and people's interests in something, and touching a nerve when you think this is important to people, it's things like this that will give you ideas about what to research. It's actually in popular culture. It's on YouTube, in the media, in educational news that you're going to see this, and you're going to develop a sense for what is a hot topic. There was another TED Talk that's interesting there on ethics in research. We talked a little bit about ethics. It's a concern that you're going to have to develop, and an expertise you're going to have to develop as you go. So keep track of that. And there's a TED Talk on ethnography. Interesting, because you've done a presentation on ethnography, but this is a TED Talk on ethnography that looks at ethnography within society generally, and why is ethnography important, not just to researchers, but also to industrialists and people who produce the services and the goods that are around you, and how it's very much part of the canvas of that daily life. It's not something that just happens in labs, etc. So just a little bit of easy watch for you, and I'll leave you on that. And apologies again for being a bit breathless. I do hope I don't have COVID. And I will chat to you all week if you have any questions, and then we'll wrap up by Sunday. Bye for now.